Hello everyone and welcome to our webcast today, 2018 SIEM Survey Results. Is there a ZOS mainframe security gap? My name is Yvonne Wheaton and I'll be your moderator today. I represent Software Diversified Services. Here's our agenda for the next 50 minutes or so. As I mentioned, I'm Yvonne Wheaton. I'm in the marketing department of Software Diversified Services. I have over 30 years in the IT business, both in system shops and in enterprise vendor environments. I'll share a bit about SDS, or Software Diversified Services, and provide a brief introduction. Denny Yost from Enterprise Systems Media will present the latest results from the 2018 SIEM survey. Denny Yost of Enterprise Systems Media has more than 40 years of hands-on mainframe and IT experience. He's the Associate Publisher and Editor-in-Chief of Enterprise Executive and the Associate Publisher of Enterprise Tech Journal. He's also written numerous product profiles, first impressions, and interviews. Colin will discuss including your SIEM solution in your ZOS mainframe environment. He will cover SMF data and WTOs that can be captured by VitalSigns SIEM Agent for ZOS and sent to the Enterprise SIEM. Colin will give you some good recommendations or baseline you can monitor with your SIEM and provide a demo so you can see event captured by VitalSigns SIEM Agent for ZOS in real time using QRadar. Colin, a senior systems engineer here at SDS, has over 30 years in the IT industry. He has over 25 years experience at a large bank as their network systems programmer responsible for network transfer and security file solutions. He has been at SDS for over 9 years now, focused on network software solutions and security solutions. Following Colin, we'll have our Q&A session. Software Diversified Services, a global leader in mainframe software, has been named to the Cybersecurity 500 list of the world's hottest and most innovative cybersecurity companies for the second quarter of 2017. Founded in 1982, SDS is a Minnesota-based company that has a 35-year history of offering security, encryption, data compression, and network monitoring customer-centric IT infrastructure solutions. We offer over 25 ZOS, MVS VSE, and VM mainframe and distributed systems business software solutions. It's noted for its award-winning technical support and industry-leading software and documentation. SDS has licensed over 1,000 enterprise clients worldwide, including many Global 500 companies, and SDS is an IBM partner in development and an advanced member of IBM Partner World. So I'm sure you've heard about the GDPR, or European Union or EU General Data Protection Regulation. It's a hot topic in data processing today. It'll be enforced starting May 25th, 2018. This regulation touches any company or organization that is processing and holding the personal data of data subjects residing in the European Union, regardless of the company's location. You can find out more details in the articles and information about the GDPR at the website listed on this slide. So who will be affected? We know just about everything we process passes through a mainframe, but why do we care? Why should we care? Because it's all about the data. So what constitutes personal data? Some of this information I'll be reading will be sentences from the website. So you want to go out and read it for yourself when you get some time. So here's one in particular. Any information related to a natural person or data subject that can be used to directly or indirectly identify the person. It can be anything from a name, a photo, an email address, bank details, posts on social networking websites, medical information, or a computer IP address. Again, we know large banks, retail information like credit card health records are processed on mainframes in many cases. Additionally, they say consent must be clear and distinguishable from other matters and provided in an intelligible and easily accessible form using clear, plain language. It must be easy to withdraw consent as it is to give it. That's significant. What are the penalties for non-compliance? Organizations can be fined up to 4% of annual global turnover for breaching GDPR, or 20 million euro. They also say this is the maximum fine that can be imposed for the most serious infringement, and one of those being not notifying supervising authority and data subject about a breach, or not conducting impact assessment. So we read about data breaches every day, it seems like nowadays. So breach notification states data breaches which may pose a risk to individuals must be notified to the DPA within 72 hours to affected individuals without undue delay. This must be done within 72 hours after becoming aware of the breach. So you can see where it's imperative that you have a tracking of your critical data. Login or security information to determine if someone has accessed an area where they can compromise your business. After Denny, Colin will be going over SMF data and how you can choose items that are relevant to your business. But for now, just to point out some of the system information, event management, or SIEM data that are available to you when events are triggered. Like fingerprints, SMF data can help you track down who's doing what in your ZOS mainframe SIEM environment. For instance, in protecting the personal data, you may want to capture an SMF record type 14 through 18 for dataset or file access. Or SMF record type 62 indicates a vSAM dataset open. DB2 audited events to provide additional level of security of mainframe security SMF 100, 102 records. Who's looking at the data? Record type 80 will give you rack of security. And 119 is for TCP/IP, Telnet, FTP, FTP client, UDP close, TN3270 to capture access information. And we talked about that. One of the things they mention is computer IP addresses. So we ask, are you including the ZOS mainframe in your distributed SIEM solution? Are you delivering real-time messages to your SIEM? Let's see what Denny's presentation on the 2018 SIEM security results will tell us. It's my pleasure to hand the presentation now over to Denny Yost from eSystems Magazine. Denny?
Thank you for joining us today. We recently conducted the 2018 Security Information and Event Management Survey, which we are performing at least once per year. I would like to present some of the findings from this survey to you. To begin, we asked respondents if their company has an enterprise security information and event management solution in place. As you can see, only 50% of the respondents stated that their company has a security information and event management solution in place, while 19% said no and 31% said they don't know. When we asked readers if their company or organization has a security information and event management solution in place for their IBM ZOS system, a shockingly small 19% said yes, while 16% indicated their company is actively working to get a solution in place. The other shock is that 31% of readers said no, their company does not have a security information and event management solution in place. After all the news reports regarding hacks into major companies, it doesn't look like companies have moved very quickly to take preventative measures that include the mainframe. If companies are not using a security information and event management solution for their mainframe, are they using anything at all to be alerted to attempted or successful security breaches? To gain that insight, we asked readers how they are currently monitoring their ZOS security events. In this case, 60% indicated that they are using both IDS and SAF SMS security reports, while 20% are exclusively using IDS, and another 20% are only using SAF SMS security reports. So at least monitoring to a degree is occurring. Next, we asked what security information and event management areas are readers most interested in, concerned about, or focused on. As you can see, the main areas are dataset access, DB2 and access security provided by ACF2, Top Secret, and RACF. The next group of interested areas are right to operator mainframe console messages, batch processing, CICS, and MQ series processing. We asked our readers to rank a set of 5 security information and event management solution requirements to learn what is most important to them. Multi-platform security information and event management support was most important to them, followed by real-time threat analysis and incident detection and response time to name the top 3. So who in our reader companies is pushing for security information and event management solutions to be implemented? When we asked this question, the overwhelming response was the executive level, defined as the folks with the roles of CIO, CTO, CFO, or CSO. Based on what this survey has shown us, IT management wants security information and event management solutions, but action to get them in place doesn't seem to be happening very quickly at all. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time today to relay some of the findings from our survey. Now I'll hand the presentation over to Colin.
Thank you, Yvonne, and thank you, Denny. Welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining us on our webinar today. Denny, some of the figures you provided today in your portion of the presentation is really interesting. The one question where you asked, does your company have a SIEM in place for ZOS? 31% of the respondents said no. 34% of them said they did not know. And I think this is pretty much in keeping with what we have been seeing since working with some of our customers and prospects. So here is the agenda for my piece of the presentation today. I'd like to go over what some of the customers are doing when it comes to bridging this mainframe security gap. It's pretty much in keeping with what you've seen in the presentation that Denny provided, some of the stats. Then also items to take into consideration if you do go down this path. Some questions to ask yourself about what is the right methodology, what is the right approach to take with this, and also what events are important for you and your company to make sure that if the unfortunate thing does happen where you are compromised, you are going to have the necessary information that is being sent from the mainframe to your SIEM, and you're going to be able to backtrack and see, exactly what transpired during that period of time. Then a little overview of the VitalSigns Agent architecture and also a short overview of some of the features of the product. And then I'm going to be doing a live demonstration for you. Okay, so let's get right to it. Again, this goes back to some of the information you saw that Denny presented. And this is what we've learned from some of our discussions with customers. Actually, I was recently on site at a customer, and their approach was to dump the SMF records on an hourly basis. They would then take that information and send it off to their SIEM. I've seen it on some occasions where customers go for sending it only once a day. So at night, when all of the SMF events have occurred at a certain time, they will then dump the SMF information or send it off to their SIEM. That certainly might not be the most proactive way of doing things, especially if there's an event that is really important and you need to take immediate action on that event. This might not be the most elegant way or the best way for you to monitor these events. I certainly got the impression from my recent on-site that customer was just sending events to their SIEM and nobody was taking further steps on the data that was being sent to their enterprise SIEM. Certainly, if something does happen, the SIEM is a very powerful box. You can trap events, you can escalate them, you can certainly look for certain strings within data on the SIEM, and if an event does occur, you can escalate that immediately to the relevant parties that need to go or need to follow up on that particular item. So maybe that's not the most proactive way of monitoring some of your events. Then I've seen some folks go the SAF reports route. That certainly works, where you can generate these reports to find out what folks are doing. It also depends on the frequency of the reports. Again, it may not be in real time, but it certainly can also identify what folks are doing on your mainframe. Then some folks are using the IDS. I know the bank I worked at, they had a different approach with regard to the IDS and where it should be positioned. They thought that positioning on the mainframe wasn't the correct place. They had it on the perimeter of the network where events, they were captured way before they even entered the bank's network back then. There are specialized platforms designed to perform network IDS, and sometimes I don't think it makes sense to use ZOS in such a role, but it all depends on your organization and what their mandates and goals are. Then also, a lot of folks are taking a more serious look at SIEM. SIEM has been around for such a long time. For some reason, the mainframe has been excluded from it. But now there are ways of getting the SMF data from the mainframe, from LPARs into your SIEM. And I think the big thing to stress here is with the VSA solution, it is certainly in real time. Just something I thought I'd share with you. I reviewed this, or I got this information from the Ponemon Institute. This was the 2017 cost of a data breach study. The time it takes to identify and contain a breach, it was reduced in 2016, it was 201 days. 2017, it was reduced to 191 days. The time to contain a breach was in 2016, 70 days, and 2017, down to 66 days. So certainly some improvements on that particular front. Hopefully maybe some of this has got to do with folks moving to a SIEM solution. And interesting to note that the average cost of a breach in the US, the cost per capita was $225. Certainly very interesting information. I would recommend that if you want more information on this, download this particular study. The source is the Ponemon Institute and the 2017 cost of a data breach study. So items to take into consideration if this is something that you want to look at. Certainly there's different approaches, but the question you should be asking, what should you be monitoring? Certainly not something that you should be doing in isolation, so it shouldn't be relied on the systems programmer or the security expert to decide what events is important to them. You would want to gather your team around all the different disciplines, and you probably heard of the term separation of duties. I've also heard of it called the segregation of duties. But sit down as a team and decide what events are important to you. I had one customer that had this was a checkbox item for him. They had an audit there. They were lacking in this particular area. He chose to implement our solution, and he turned on all of the events and sent all of them to his enterprise SIEM. So maybe, probably not the best way to do things, but it was something that he needed to do. He had some other priorities, so he turned on the events, and I'm guessing some filtering will take place later on the line, down the line. We do have a very good baseline that we ship the product with, something that you can consider using. It's not a one-size-fits-all, but certainly I think it is a really good starting point. So from the get-go, you have some events that's going to be reported to your SIEM. You can certainly build on this or take off as you deem fit. But it's a good baseline, and in fact we have some records that I'll share with you from a SMF80 type point of view. So this is events that or information that we've learned from our customers, what they thought was really important to monitor from an SMF80 point of view. Careful, some of those records can be pretty overwhelming. One that you need to look out for is going to be the SMF92s. They can be pretty, there's a lot of information. So perhaps if you do want to enable some of those 92 records, only enable a subtype of them. And then just to share some information with you, this is something that we can pass on to you, disseminate to the audience today. But if you want to get some more information, and this is, like I said to you, what we've learned from our customers, they thought that all the ones highlighted in red were really important, and that should be monitored on the product, whereas the ones highlighted in yellow were not as important, and they thought that these are the ones that you should be turned on and monitor from a RACF point of view. And as you can see, there's a bunch of these RACF commands, some really powerful ones, but we can certainly share this information with you. So some items to take into consideration if you do going down this path and you want to bridge this gap, this security gap, what SMF records are important to you. We monitor a whole slew of SMF records, but you will have to determine which are the ones that you want to turn on. What files are important to you? Is sys1.palmlab one of them? I know that would be one that would be a good candidate for you to monitor. So VSA will be able to monitor all the updates, any activity that occurred on the sys1.palmlab PDS. There might be some other important ones that you want to include, and I'll show you that in my live demo, how you can add these PDSs or the data sets to the VSA configuration ISPF panel and you then can monitor some of this very important data sets. How about those really important TSO user IDs? The bank I used to work at had a methodology when I used to go in on a change control or a maintenance slot, and you want to implement your changes. Our our TSO user IDs that we used did not have the relevant access, so we would have to implement some change control procedure to get these really powerful TSO user IDs that will allow us to implement our changes. But those TSO user IDs were pretty powerful. You had access to almost everything on the mainframe or on that LPAR. That would probably have been a really good candidate to monitor and see exactly what changes were made during that particular time when these changes were implemented in our maintenance slot. Do you want to be made aware of when TSO user IDs are logging outside of your normal hours? Perhaps user ID or TSO user ID logging at 2 o'clock in the morning is not normal operation for you, and you want to be made aware of that. So that's certainly something that the SIEM can escalate for you. Or how about some of those important right to operator console messages? The ICH 408I message springs to mind. That's one that would tell you when a RACF violation occurs. Perhaps you want to monitor some the SMF 119 records. Perhaps when a file gets stored or the file is retrieved from the mainframe, those do kick out right to operator console messages. You can put this in the product so that you have some idea. But then again, the SMF 19 record 119 might just be the one that you're interested in. The APF changes, I know this is something that auditors want to keep tabs of. In fact, since ZOS 2.1, SMF90, a new SMF90 record has been added. So you can keep tabs on when APF changes were made, whether there were additions or files that were removed from the APF list. RACF commands, pretty straightforward. The setter-ops command, you'll see that in my live demo. Some of the commands I just shared with you on the spreadsheet, those would be the ones that you want to add to the monitoring to make sure that you got a full scope or you got full visibility as to what the security administrators are performing on a day-to-day basis. How about the starter tasks when they end and fired up? So you can get information on those, and I'll illustrate that in our live demo. The FTP transfers, which I mentioned, the SMF 119s, perhaps you want to go back, a year or two to figure out what a file was, stored on the mainframe. You can go back and see the user ID, the date and time, what files were retrieved from the mainframe. So that could be something that you want to take into consideration if you're going down this path and want to add this information into the configuration of the product and sending off to your enterprise SIEM. USS activity. There's a lot of products these days that exploit USS. There's a few powerful commands. I've used a few of them. The change ownership command and the change mod command are two that spring to mind. Perhaps you want to monitor those. Certainly turn on those so you can get visibility. But remember, this is the one that I would advise using. Don't just open up the floodgates because it can be pretty chatty. And this is the SMF92. It generates a lot of records and a lot of activity. DB2 activity, so we can provide activity on that. If you're a DB2 shop and you want to know, what people are doing, the SMF 100 and 102 records and the IFCIDs or the IFSIDs, as sometimes people refer to it, we can provide you some good information on that. So the product does support DB2. That is an additional component on the product. And then Syslog D activity. Do you want to know what is occurring from a Syslog D point of view? So all things, items to take into consideration. And certainly you have to work with your team to figure out what is the best way, what's the right information that you want to monitor, and make sure that you're covering the full spectrum, because the last thing you want to do is leave out something and that turns out to be where you're lacking and you need to go back and find out this information at a later stage. So here's the architecture of the VSA product. Runs on the mainframe on ZOS, runs as a starter task, and we gather information from, so these are the data sources from ZOS SMF records in real time. We can send this event in real time to your SIEM. Then we also can harvest the right to operator messages, right to operator console messages, and also DB2 is where we gather information from. We require the IFU 83 and 84 and 85. In fact, 83 and 84 exits, they need to be available. So you need to make sure those are turned on, and that's where we gather the information from. In fact, when the starter task comes up, we'll tell you which ones we've connected to and which ones we are monitoring on. Then the right to operator console messages, those ICH 408I messages or any messages that you deem important. Right now, we gather that through the subsystem and forward that off to your enterprise SIM. There is some changes going to take place. We have this on our roadmap. We're probably going to make this a little bit easier and go for a MCS or EMCS console, gather or capture those right to operator console messages through that mechanism. That's on our roadmap. Then also the SMF 100 and 102 messages is something that we gather from a DB2 point of view. So in VSA, you have a ISPF panel that you can use to configure what messages, what files you want monitored. And then also in the configuration of the actual product, you can turn on what SMF events you want enabled. So if you want the VSAM updates, the TCP/IP, FTP 119s, the SMF 80s, the SMF, boy, there's a whole bunch of them, SMF 42s, 30s, 17s, 18s, 62s. Those are all ones that you can turn on, but that all goes back to what you want to monitor and what we just spoke about, some of the questions you need to ask yourself. Also, if you're a site that uses, more than one SAF product, so whether it's RACF, ACF2, and Top Secret, we don't care. We do support any one of these. If you're one cake running RACF and the other is running Top Secret, all you have to do is configure the agent to use whatever the local SAF product is that it's running. So we do support all three of those. And we also have some fine examples on all three of those. Then the APFs I mentioned, and also USS activity. All of this information is forwarded from the SIM agent on the mainframe to your enterprise SIM. So it could be QRadar, Splunk, ArcSight. We're agnostic. We send to any one of those in the correct format. We can deliver the messages using TCP, and that can be encrypted using ATTLS. So obviously there's really sensitive information that is being sent from the mainframe agent across to the enterprise SIM. So that's something that you may want to turn on. We also do have a mechanism if for some reason that we're trying to deliver these secure TCP, using TCP, obviously TCP is connection oriented. We guarantee the delivery of these messages to your enterprise SIM. But let's assume for some reason that the enterprise SIM is not available and we're unable to deliver the messages. We will kick out a message to let you know that we're unable to deliver those messages to the enterprise SIM. That'll give you time to go and follow up with your SIM guys to find out if there's any outage on that area or on that box. Once they got it up, we will then send all of those all those secure messages or all those messages that is destined for the QRadar, and we will deliver them. They'll be buffered up in the starter task or in the address space, and we will send them off. Obviously, there are some constraints as to how long we will keep those messages in the starter task. If you have a site that is running more than one enterprise SIM, so you have maybe two of them, maybe one for standby or one for backup. If you're using UDP, you can deliver to multiple sites. You just configure the IP address. So you can deliver them using TCP, securely using ATLS, or you can use UDP if that is your preference. Then to wrap it up, how this all fits into the big picture. So integrating your mainframe into your network security, we always ask folks, if you have an enterprise SIM, why is the mainframe excluded from it? Why not just include it? So here we've got agents running on all of these LPARs, and they're sending events to the enterprise SIM. The firewall guys and the router guys have been exploiting this for years. So those events are also being sent to your enterprise SIM and also Windows and Unix. I was at a conference recently. The presenter was talking about the opportunity a customer had where they were monitoring events. Some piece of this particular application resided on the mainframe and another piece resided on the Windows application. They were sending all of these events from both of these origins to the SIM, and they were able to piece all of that all together when they were tracking some sort of violation that they were looking into. Okay, short overview of VSA, some of the features, we have a TSO rule generator. I'll be showing you that in the live demo. So that's how you can add filters, message IDs and user IDs to the product to monitor. Then for those customers that have, maybe a large amount of rules that they want to add to the product, you can use the batch rule generator. So that's a batch job that implements these rules into these VSAM files. Something very interesting that a lot of customers like about the product is if you have some events that are archived. So perhaps you do not have this visibility right now, and you intend to run an agent on one of your LPARs that archive SMF information, you can take them and feed them through the batch feed of the product, send them off to your SIEM, and you can get visibility on those records from a year or 2 or 3 years ago. So that's certainly something that some of our customers like. Alerts are delivered from the Mainframe agent using UDP, TCP to the SIEM or to IDS. So something that we spoke about. So how does it work? It runs as a starter task on all of the LPARs that you want security events reported on. If you have 10 LPARs and you elect to run an agent on every one of those, you'd need 10 of those, one agent per LPAR. We use the industry standard UDP and also TCP to deliver the messages to the SIEM. We can send to multiple destinations if that's a requirement. We can also write to DASD and exploit user SMF records. So if you have some of those products that are using user SMF records, we can certainly do that. And as I mentioned, agnostic, we can deliver to any one of the SIEMs on the market. The supported log types, Leaf, you've heard of that. That's the one that QRadar uses, log event extended format. We are certified Leaf, so the format that we send the data from our agent to the SIEM is in the format that complies with the IBM standard. So the event there you can see it standards with the IBM QRadar Leaf format. So you will be guaranteed that the data is coming in the right direction, or getting it in the right format, shall I say. Then there's also the SAFE format, common event format, where it also complies with the requirements of HP ArcSight and common event format. Again, we will send the data, and when it gets to the other side, HPE ArcSight will be able to understand and interpret that data. Okay, so let's get to the live demonstration. I'm going to switch to one of my TSO sessions, and I'm going to illustrate to you how you can add some of these rules. So let's execute this. This is the ISPF interface. Remember, I told you they can also use a batch interface. So let's add a filter, and in this particular case, I want to add a filter and say I want to know anytime there's any updates to sys1.palmlab. For the most part, we would recommend leaving these base values to what we've set them, the number of exceptions and also the time limits. These are pretty good working starting values. If you want to be a bit more aggressive, you can certainly tweak them. And they also are documented how these operands work. So let's hit the F4 button. That'll add that particular record, sys1.palmlab. Let's add another one, and let's go with this particular and say let's monitor any message that begins with 408i, and we can use wildcarding as well. So let's do the F4 and add that one, ICH 408i, and then let's go with one last one, and let's add my user ID. So oops, that's not going to work. Let's go with use and go with BCVR0. That's my user ID. So I'm saying that the product must monitor any activity from user ID BCVR0. And I'll hit the F4 button, that'll add it, and there you can see them, sys1.palmlab, ICH408i, and you can see I've got a few others. Pretty easy to get rid of them or to make any changes. So for example, if I want to delete one of these, I can just go D there, and that'll delete it for me. But there you can see some of the messages that I have in effect. So I'm ready to go. Let's bring up QRadar. I'm going to bring up QRadar here. I've got it running on one of my browsers. There's QRadar. This is the product that we're sending events to. In fact, I've chosen to configure my agent to send events to multiple destinations. So I'm also sending events to something called Kiwi Syslog Service Manager. And I will show you that when I do the live demo now and generate some of these events, you can see the difference. This is just coming in a syslog format. So Let's close that off. I'm going to go back to my emulator, and let me just point out what the plan is here. I'm going to be logging on, creating events, different SMF events from my mainframe on the mainframe called 031. So there you can see the log source is 031. As I do this, you're going to see the events pop up on the left-hand side on QRadar. So let's kick it off. I'm going to log on generating a SMF type 80 event. And let's go with one called bad guy. And immediately there you can see it came up. The user ID specified is undefined. So truly real time. The events are generated almost immediately. So let's go with my user ID. Let's go with a bad password. And you'll be able to see immediately insufficient authority, invalid password specified. So let's log on. And now get the logon information about my user ID logon. Remember, I've specified to monitor everything that's occurring from PCVR0's point of view. So all activity about my user ID is going to be recorded. Let's go to 3.4 and let's go to sys1.palmlib. And I'm going to edit sys1.palmlib. Let's create a member called test. And as you can see on the left-hand side, there's some activity going on there. Let's save that off. There you can see the DFSM add replace. By the way, you'll see some of them saying unknown. So just for demo purposes, we've created something called a DSM. The folks that's on the call today that know a lot about SIEM will know about a DSM. But what we can do is we can send you a QID file. It's a text file that you can upload to your QRadar, which basically makes the customization of some of these events a lot easier. So that's the reason why you're seeing some of them unknown. Let's delete that, and you'll see there's the delete. Okay, so that's worked. We now proven, or we are monitoring all events from a sys1.palmlib point of view. Okay, I'm going to go back and let's go to RACF. Option 3 is RACF. Just generate a few of these. I don't have access to all of these setups command. There you can see immediately insufficient authority. So I'm just going to do one more. And let's close that off. Let's try generating a digital certificate. Again, I do not have access to this, but you'll see the messages are being generated and immediately popping up on QRadar. Okay, let's get out of RACF and let's go and have a look at the log just to show you some of those right to operator console messages. And I'm just going to go back down here. There you can see user ID BCVR0. This Colin guy is somebody that we don't trust here, and he's generating a lot of these violations. So we need to look into what this guy was doing. While we're here, let's illustrate how you can get some messages on a starter task. So I'm going to bring down one of my agents. This is one of my automation agents, and there are some other events occurring on the left hand side. It looks like some other people are on the system, so they're also getting some events. And there you can see my starter task has come down, starter task terminated, and I'm going to fire it back up. This particular automation product is going to open up a VSAM file, so I'm going to see some information on VSAM files as well. There you can see it looks like, yeah, it opens up a listener as well. There's the VSAM dataset open, and eventually I'll get the message ID saying that the starter task has initialized. So all good information about this particular one. While I'm over here, let's go and try adding a APF. So I've both for the APF, I've got the SMF 90, and I'm also acting on the right to operator console message, and there you can see APF data addition, and I will delete it as well. Let's go back to the delete, and I'm going to get messages for both of those. So they're all good information about that. Let's go to one of the others. I showed you the VSAM. I'm going to try mounting a file system, and let's see what information we can get on here. Let's go to the file systems, and let's go to the mount table, and I'm just going to unmount one for you just for illustration purposes. This is the one that I said to you, be careful on SMF92s. There's one of my file systems. I'm going to unmount it, and that'll unmount the file system for me. So I'll get both information about mounting and unmounting, and there you can see the unmount for the file system. Let's do one more. And what I'll do here is let's generate a SMF 119 record, or a couple of them. I'm just going to log on to FTP from here, and you'll be able to see some of those SMF 19 records. And there you can see again some of those events, and if we'll go into those in a second or two just to give you an idea of what the message looks like on here. So let's stay here. I'm not going to log off. In fact, if I did log off, you're going to get that messages over here saying that I have logged off. So let's go and view some of the information on QRadar. I'm in real-time mode at the moment. In order for me to view the messages, I need to go back for a portion. Like I'm gone back 30 minutes, and now I can view some of the information that's just transpired here on my network. So there's the Unix unmount. We can have a quick look at that one. And there's the SMF92. Remember, this is the one I told you about. There you can see BCVR0. That's my user ID. Remember, we did define that when we said what it should monitor. There's the aggregate that I've unloaded. That's the user ID, the date and time, the SMF9205 subtype. So information about that event. Let's try one or two others before I go and show you some of the stats on the product. And let's go and try one or two. Maybe have a look at the starter task. So let's go and see some information about the starter task. This could be of importance to you. There you can see the SMF type 80 was generated. BCVR0 was the person that brought it down. Some information on when it was brought down, and also the reason, and also the SMF event. Let's try one last one before I switch to the Kiwi Syslog product, just to give you a feel for what it looks like in Syslog format. Let's see if we got one security one. There's the APF. Let's go to a different screen. There's the RACF insufficient authority. Let's go and pull up that one. And I think this is going to be the right to operator messages for my user ID ICH4008I. When I tried to create the RACF digital certificate, I did not have access to that. And now you can see some of the information about this, and that's the message ID that's got trapped there. So that's what it looks like on QRadar, to give you a feel for what it looks like on a one of our other products. So I told you I'm sending to multiple destinations, the Kiwi Syslog Service Manager, and here you can see some of the information. It looks like that's an SMF92. That could have been when I was doing the Unix system services stuff. Let's see what else is further down here. I'm just going to point out one or two, but this is just to give you an idea. Some people don't send to a fully blown SIM, they just use a Syslog monitor. This is the one that we used for our evaluation, but that's just one. It's just to give you an idea of some of the events. Again, a lot of 92s, SMF 92s. There looks like an SMF 30. That could be somebody else, or it could be me when I brought down the starter task, just to give you a feel for what it looks like in regular format. Again, the host name, and also system time, and also the date and time that this occurred. There's some other information which I don't have time to show you on here, some stats. You can see how much information or how many events has been delivered to the Kiwi Syslog monitor. So let me go back to TSO, and what I want to do is I'm going to conclude the presentation just to show you the configuration of the product and also some of the stats that it produces. I know some of the folks on the call today we can assist you from a performance and a pricing point of view. A lot of the enterprise SIMs, they bill you according to the amount of events that you are sending to the mainframe. So we can certainly help you with that. That's why maybe opening up the floodgates and just sending everything to the enterprise SIM might not be the best way to go. So I'm going to show you the configuration. Just browse the configuration. There you can see we RACF, and we're turning on, these are the events that we're looking for. Obviously, this is a vendor environment. We're showing it for illustration purposes, so it may not be what you want to do in your environment. We also got DB2 turned on some of the audit classes. There you can see some of them with the SMF 102s. Monitoring USS events. So also, let me just see. Yeah, I'm sending to Leaf. So that's the alert header that we're sending. That's the IP address and the name of the TCP/IP starter task, the subtask. Yeah, I'm sending in a UDP format, and there you can see the 2 IP addresses that I'm sending to. Then also, this might be of interest to you. Let's assume you now testing and you sending events from the mainframe to your enterprise or your SIM, whatever the SIM is on the other end, and your gentleman on the SIM side is saying he's not seeing any events. Make this right to con opera internet to yes, so that what will happen is then we will generate messages inside of the starter task in the address space, and anytime an SMF event or right to operator console message is generated, you will then see it in the starter task, and that'll give you a good idea as to the events of what events are being generated. So there you can see some of the events that we have here. And then lastly, just to show you the stats file, here you can see some of the stats. And this is just going to give you, oops, that's the wrong one. This is going to give you a good idea as to what events are being delivered. There's SMF 15s, there's some of them, and this might help you from a performance and also a pricing point of view to see how many events are being sent from the mainframe to the enterprise SIM. There's the 92s, that's the one I warned you about. Be careful about that one. And then we also have some security events that we can tell you. So here's the type 80s, 277 events was delivered. These were the TSO log-on, log-offs. There's some authority checks, define resources, set our ops commands. And this is some of the information that we can provide for you. So I want to thank you for your time today. I'm going to hand it back to Yvonne to take some of the questions that you have been placing in the question box. And Yvonne, let's go and field some of those questions. Thanks everyone, and Yvonne, over to you.